Okay, so these are just, general overview of the term sheet. So let's go into a bit of the substance of the term sheet, right? Should I go for equity or debt? I think this one is down your alley.
Okay. I don't see that many convertible notes so far at Series A. And I think there's a cultural reason for that. The US, people from the US are more comfortable with it, whereas at least Singaporean investors and startups don't quite like it, because to them when they think of debt, they think of have to pay back at some point. I think interest. I think of if I don't pay, they can wind me up. There's this fear, and it looks bad on my ratios, my financial ratios.
I've never seen a debt investment for Series A for a few reasons. Number one, I think for a debt, there is very little upside to debt. So as the company grows, even if there's higher valuation, if you're the lender, you're fixed with your returns. Also, from a founder's perspective, you're in debt. It's very clear it's a debt. So if you fail to pay, what happens? They either enforce security, if there is security. That means you're losing some form of asset. Or if there's no security, your recourse is to go to court and sue. That means you get sued either in your personal capacity, if you have that side agreement, or your company could go into liquidation, bankruptcy, which is not what you want. So not very attractive, I think, generally.
But having said that, I've met people who like that. And the reason for that is sometimes because it's convertible debt, they like it that if the investor really likes the company but they can't agree on the valuation for some reason, because being founders, they are quite bullish about their prospects. And investors, they're managing other people's money. The more they pay, the less their results look good, right? So there's sometimes a valuation gap, and some people like that because we are postponing that discussion. We will talk again when there's some other investor coming in. Then we can fix a valuation. So that's also a reason some people use debt. Also, sometimes they're just not ready for Series A, but they need some what we call a bridging funds. So convertible debt is a lot more common at a later stage, where between rounds, they don't really want to price the round yet because they're waiting for a key contract to come in. And once that key contract comes in, the valuation will shoot up. But they need money now because the cash flow and all.
So how does this affect the founders? So you have cash flow through the debt, but no real fixed valuation in respect of the convertible component. How does this affect the founder? It affects your shareholding. They will convert it for equity, and then there will be a dilution. So your convertible function of that debt element, you have to be very careful so that you don't get over diluted. Especially when your valuation is not clear.
Has anyone done a debt round before? I do see it in Singapore once in a while. Anyone seen done? So just to move on before that, I think there is no right or wrong answer. It depends on the situation. And people ask me, have you seen any investor really wind up the company? I would say you hear stories, but I've not actually come across. It's a risk, but I think most of the time investors are quite smart. If the company is just going to the ground, they will just cut loss. Why spend money and time and risk its reputation by winding the company up? So it's something to think about. Venture debt is, I think, quite new in this part of the world. I think the Singapore government has come up with funding schemes, but it's not available for most startups because you do need you need to be quite, I think generally the requirements are maybe about $1 million in revenue. You need to be large and there has to be some security. So it's not a real option for most early stage startups. That's number one.
I can't really speak about the DBS arrangement because I'm not familiar with that market. But if we go back to basic principles, when you take on debt in the company, it means that the borrower takes on the risk of repayment, right? If you don't repay, you've got repercussions. But whereas if you have your equity option, the risk is sort of realigned or rebalanced so that if there's a failure to give that premium element to the investor, that's fine. I mean, there may be other recourse, but generally speaking, equity, when you invest in equity, a lot of burden is taken off from the founders, from the startup to repay that amount. So that's my 2 cents worth from a practical perspective.
Okay, this question has been around for a long time. You know, when I first came out of practice, it was there. Today it's still here. And some of you might be familiar with Y Combinator, right? Pretty well known. They came out with this really interesting instrument called the SAFE. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. It's really interesting. It's both debt and equity. It's a hybrid. So there's no repayment date. So it's not really debt. But it's also not equity because you don't actually get shares. So people have tried to skirt around this. I don't like debt. I don't like equity. What if something in between? But it's complicated, you know. And not a lot of, the main thing is you need to know this question: should I go for equity or debt? It's the investor who normally dictates. So even if you prepared a really nice term sheet, I met founders who really went to read and prepared a nice term sheet, beautiful. I would love for them to use that, but they go to the investor and, sorry, whose money is it? So I think that's the key thing also. The investor usually dictates, unless you're really hot, you're a Facebook. So the point is, get to know both in case the investor likes convertible debt. But generally, as we mentioned, equity is still the more common instrument. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, can you say that again? Same approach. Oh.
I've seen it, but not at Series A. Because most people don't really get it. It's not even that popular, convertible debt. So you have something newer than that, and there's not a lot of awareness. Regional. Safe. Is it actually safe? I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Actually, if you look at preference shares, there is some element of, arguably some element of debt in there. If it's a redeemable, convertible preference share. So the investor pumps money into the company in return for the RCPS. The RCPS can either be redeemed. So that means if company redeems the RCPS, I pay you back. So let's say you invest $1 million, I pay back the 1 million plus, a premium to it. Or I could convert it into equity. So that could be that hybrid that we're thinking about. Could be. I haven't studied the Y Combinator hybrid, but that sounds that it could work both ways. The redemption function sounds like it's a debt, but the conversion function turns it into equity.
Yep. Maybe we move on. We can talk about that.
Yeah, because there is a slide coming up on that point. If there are multiple investors, should they be on similar terms? In my view, I think if it's at the same round, it should be at the same terms. It's very practical reason for doing so. Also, the commercial state of that company has to be the same. At the time of funding.
One quick one on this. Thanks for reminding me. Convertible debt, some people used to like it because they felt you could do multiple rounds at different closings, because sometimes different investors have different time scales, right? They need to seek approval from the IC and all that. So you can actually use convertible debt to come in at different times, whereas equity, you generally come in at the same time, right? Yeah. But again, you need to know what you're doing in convertible debt. It's not so understood.
Yeah, I think convertible debt is very, very tricky.